In example 3, we're going to be solving a word problem using 3x3 systems. It says, over the last 3 evenings, Susan received a total of 95 phone calls at the call center. The third evening, she received 5 fewer calls than the first evening. The second evening, she received 4 times as many calls as the third evening. How many phone calls did she receive each evening? Let's start again with our variables. So what are we trying to find in this problem? We are trying to find the number of phone calls each evening. So there are 3 different evenings. So let's let x equal the number of calls for the first evening. Let's let y equal the number of calls the second evening. Oops. And let's let z equal the number of calls for the third evening. Then our second thing that we have to do is come up with our equations. It says in this first part that Susan received a total of 95 phone calls at the call center. So over all 3 evenings, she had a total of 95 phone calls. So we can say x plus y plus z is equal to 95. Adding up all the calls for each evening should be 95. Then it says the third evening, she received 5 fewer calls than the first evening. Again, this is one that you want to try to write down as you're reading it. So we're starting with the third evening. So the third evening is z. So let's start with z. And it says the third evening received. That verb right there is, was, received. That means equals. And then it's 5 fewer calls than the first evening. So what we need to do, if we have 5 fewer calls than the first evening, we want to take the first evening and subtract 5. So our first evening was x, and we want to subtract 5 from that. Then it says the second evening, she received 4 times as many calls as the third evening. So let's start with the first part. It says the second evening. So let's start with the second evening, and that's y. Received means equals 4 times as many calls as the third evening. So we're taking 4 times the third evening, which would be 4 times z. Now we have our equations, and now we have to go through and solve them. So step 3, we're going to go ahead and solve these equations. I'm going to move this over a little bit so we have some more room. Now in order to solve this system of 3 equations, it's a little bit different than some of the ones we've been working with. Here we have z is equal to x minus 5, and here we have y is equal to 4 times z. What we want to do is we want to get one equation in terms of all the same variables. Well, these 2 equations have either an x or a y, but they both have z. So what we can do is we can get both of them in terms of z. So for instance, this y is already in terms of z. We know y is equal to 4z. So what I'm going to do with this equation, z equal to x minus 5, is I'm going to solve for x so that I can get x in terms of z. To do that, I'm going to add 5 over to the other side. So I know that z plus 5 is equal to x. And then what I can do is I can take the fact that x is equal to z plus 5 and y is equal to 4z, and I can plug both of these things into my original equation. So it's going to look like this. Instead of the x, I'm replacing this x with z plus 5. Then I'm going to replace this y with 4z. And then I have my z that's still there, and I'm going to leave that z there. And that's equal to 95. The reason I have that, now I have all one variable. I have everything in terms of z, and I can go ahead and solve the problem. Start by combining like terms. 1z plus 4z plus 1z will give me 6z plus 5 equal to 95. If I subtract 5 from both sides, I get 6z equal to 90. And if I divide both sides by 6, I get z equal to 15. And if I know z is equal to 15, and x is just z plus 5, I know that x is equal to 20. And if z is 15 and y is 4 times z, then I know that y is going to be 4 times 15, which is 60. Then my last step here is to write my answer with the correct units. So step 4, let's see, I'm going to move that over here. So step 4, I can say that I had the first evening was equal to 20 calls. The second evening was equal to 60 calls. And my third evening was equal to 15 calls. Now I would like you to do the try this, so you can go ahead and pause this and unpause it when you are ready to check your answer. If you did the try this correctly, you should get that Kendall has $20, Justin has $75, and Reagan has $25. If you have questions on this, please raise your hand so I can come around and help you.